Namo Siddhanam. Jai Jinendra, everyone. Welcome to JainHeritageCenters.com's 20th anniversary celebrations, which has been celebrated through Jain Heritage Festival 2022. And the theme of this week is Jainism and Prakrit. And we are in the third lecture related to Jainism and Prakrit. And this is the 18th session. And we have our 32nd speaker of this series today. And before we start, let's quickly have a glimpse of our website, jainheritagecenters.com. And here is a slide that gives an overview about our organization and how it started, when it started, the content of our website and other details. And here is a slide that gives you an overview about our website, jainheritagecenters.com's activities over the past 20 years, and what are the kind of different projects we have worked upon over the past 20 years. It's a quick glimpse of what we have done over the past 20 years. As you see here, you can again see a few other activities being showcased. And finally, now we are back to the main part of this particular series, that is an exclusive lecture about Prakrit language and its contribution in promoting Indian culture. The speaker for this session is Dr. Priyadarshana Jain, who is an associate professor and head Department of Jainology, University of Madras, Chennai. Before we start, here is a quick overview or a quick introduction about Dr. Priyadarshana Jain. Dr. Priyadarshana Jain is from Rajasthan, living in Chennai. She has done her MA, MPhil, and PhD in Jain Studies. She has done a diploma in Prakrit and master diploma in naturopathy and yogic sciences. At present, she is serving as associate professor and head Department of Jainology, University of Madras, Chennai. And she has traveled extensively to USA, UK, Thailand, Hong Kong, and all over India, giving talks, lectures, and discourses related to Jainism and Prakrit. And she's also a resource person for the International School for Jain Studies, where she has been teaching foreign scholars for the past 15 years. And she has also served as a director of Buddhist Studies at the University of Madras and is a member of the Academic Council and many prestigious academic bodies. She has organized and conducted many national and international seminars and workshops related to Jainism, Buddhism, holistic healing, meditation, and others. And she has also presented papers at many national and international seminars and conferences in English and Hindi. She was a part of the interfaith religious delegation sponsored by the US Department of State, wherein she represented Jainism at different cities in USA. She is the coordinator of Arugha Bohi Labam, a fitness and wellness program conducted online in which more than 250 people from USA, UK, Australia, Singapore, Dubai, Qatar, and other parts of the world and different parts of India participate and have been benefited during the pandemic. She has written, edited, translated, and published books and articles. She is a resource person for Paramagama Honors course, wherein she is currently handling 2 batches internationally. Empowering the youth holistically is her mission and passion. She specializes in teaching comparative Jain philosophy and religious thought, integrating with ancient and modern sciences. She has guided 15 people for PhDs and 25 plus people for MPhil. And at present, 55 full-time students are doing their masters in Jain studies under her at the University of Madras. In addition to all this, she's also the course coordinator of Prakrit Studies and the Research Foundation for Jainology, Chennai. And along with this, we have already heard about her work with naturopathy. She's also a certified naturopathy and wellness coach. And it's a privilege to have such a learned scholar who has worked extensively in the field of Jainology over the years. And with this, I'll welcome Dr. Priyadarshana Madam and hand over the dais to her. Over to you, Madam.
Jai Jinendra, and thank you, Nitin, for all the kind words you have told about me. Thank you so much. I'll begin my talk with the prayer in Prakrit language, which is namaskar or salutation or obeisance to the great Jainavani and Anekantavada. Arhant bhasyatham Ganahar Devihim Gantiyam Sammam Panamami Bhakti Jutto Sudanana Mahodayim Sirasam. Jena Vinalogasavi Vavahar Savahanane Vai Asavika Guruno Ayasa Jayadu Sudha Devata Shruta Ki Jai Ho. So this salutation was to the scriptures, the divine revelations of Arhant Bhagwan, constructed by the Ganadharas and handed down to us. And the essence of the Jain scriptures is Anekantavada, which says that reality is multidimensional and we need to look at it from many angles to understand the complex reality. So that there is one master of the whole universe, one teacher of the whole universe, and that is Anekantavad. So with my humble salutation to the great philosophers and the great philosophy of Anekantavad, I would at the outset like to thank Nitin and the entire team of Jain Heritage Centers. I think Nitin is a one-man institution running this great website, which is celebrating its 20 years. And I would like to congratulate him and wish him many, many, many more 20 such years, many 20 years sets I would like to wish him. And he's a person who's brought great laurels to himself and to the entire Jain community through this website. So he's very passionate about his work like me. And it's a mutual admiration society between Nitin and me. And I share a very great rapport with him. And I would like to thank him for this invitation, for arranging this heritage series. You know, it'll be a landmark in itself once all the articles, the contributions that are coming through this series are published. So we look forward to that. And I'm very happy to deliver this lecture for Jain Heritage Centers and Heritage Center and for all of you. And I wish to interact with all of you. And I will request you to kindly note down the points and please raise some questions and have an interaction, a scholarly interaction. We would like to take it forward, the Prakrit studies. Now coming to the theme, contribution of, first of all, Prakrit language and its contribution to Indian culture. We should understand that the Indian culture is an amalgamation of two cultures. One is the Shramanic culture and one is the Vedic culture. So people know about the Vedic culture to a great extent, but the Shramanic culture seems to have lost in antiquity. Although the Buddhist culture has spread far and wide, but the Jain culture, which is a branch of the Shramanic culture along the side of Buddhism, is not known much to the people. And the same goes for Prakrit language also. If you do a survey and ask our Jain friends, our Jain children, who are not exposed to Jain studies and all this, and ask them what is the language of the Namokara mantra or the Namaskara Maha mantra, I have asked a few people and they ended up saying that it is Sanskrit. Our own Jain people telling that Namokara mantra is in Sanskrit. Although you all know that the Namokara mantra is in Prakrit language. So that is the ignorance of Prakrit language. Had we not got to study this, got to do this Prakrit certificate and diploma courses, and I have a experience of teaching Prakrit for the past 22 years in Chennai. And for the past 2 years, I'm teaching it online, the certificate and diploma programs. And last year, there were 70 people doing the Prakrit certificate course. And this year we have 40 people doing the certificate course and around 12 people doing the diploma course. And I should tell you that I have gone through a hell a lot of difficulties in studying Prakrit before I eventually got to study Prakrit. I was misled that you should study Sanskrit to study Prakrit. So I studied Sanskrit. And then I went on to a few institutions where they told me that they would translate all the Prakrit verses into Sanskrit and give the grammar of Sanskrit and tell me to understand the Prakrit verses. So, and then also I could not master Prakrit until I met Dr. Kamalchand Sogani at Jaipur, who is the director of Apabhramsha Sahitya Academy. And when I landed over there, and he told me about his certificate and diploma courses, and I asked him only one question: will I be able to read the Prakrit texts if I do this course? And he said yes. And I registered for the course and I did what I was told. And I was so satisfied that in 1997, I completed my PhD. And in 2000, I did my diploma in Prakrit. And the diploma in Prakrit gave me more happiness than the PhD I did, because PhD was in English language and Prakrit was in the language in which the great Jain Agamas were written. And I got to read Acharang Sutra, the 9th chapter of Acharang Sutra over there. And till today, I feel that Mahavir is in front of me and he's talking to me and I'm doing his work. So the joy that I've got studying Prakrit made me teach Prakrit. And I will tell you 2 more experiences of 2 of my students. So and whenever I meet my students, I ask them, are you putting the Prakrit to use? Are you reading the Agamas? Are you reading the scriptures in the language in which they are written? And they said, yes, madam, we are reading them and we are able to understand them. And one student recently told that I could do the grammatical analysis of one of the chapters of Uttaradiyan Sutra. And I'm so happy about it. I'm so happy about it. And I'm so happy about it. So the joy that you get when you read the scriptures in the language in which they are written. Imagine reading Shakespeare in Tamil and reading the Tirukural in German. Will you have the same experience, the joy, the flavor that you get to read them in their original languages? So, and the maximum damage to Prakrit studies is done by the Jains themselves. Because our acharyas wrote the Sanskrit commentaries, and even today, the Jain acharyas, I don't know about all, but a few groups here and there, they want to read in Sanskrit. They want to read Sanskrit and they don't prefer Prakrit. And through Sanskrit, they try to read the Prakrit. They memorize all the sutras in Sanskrit and then they apply it on the Prakrit text and they do the translation. But in Soganiji's school of thought, we were taught how to read Prakrit in our mother tongue. If you're a Tamil speaking Jain, you can learn Prakrit in Tamil. If you're a Kannada speaking Jain, you can learn Prakrit in your mother tongue. And I'm a Hindi speaking Jain, so I learned Prakrit through the Hindi language. And I'm able to translate, I'm able to interpret, I'm able to read the great texts of Kunda Kunda, or whether it is later on in Apabhramsha of Joindu Dev and others. So friends, through this lecture series, even if a few people come forward to learn Prakrit and to read the great scriptures, I will think my job as a lecturer today, as a resource person today for Jain Heritage Centers is done. So with this little backdrop and personal experience of Prakrit language, and here and there I'll be throwing some Subhashitas, good Prakrit sayings that are there in Prakrit language on and off. And now I would like to begin my lecture with introduction to Prakrit. What is Prakrit? So if you take the word Prakrit and analyze it, you can break it into 2 components. Prak plus Krita. Prak means first, Krita means done. That means what? It has been done since before. Nobody knows since when. It has been coming down since ages and ages and ages. Nobody knows since when. So how we cannot trace the origin of Jainism or the great Indian culture, we cannot trace the origin of Prakrit. And there are two schools of thought. One says that Prakrit comes from Sanskrit. And I have all the quotations of the scholars who say that Prakrit comes from Sanskrit. For example, Hemchandra Acharya says, Prakritihi Samskritam Tatra Bhavam Tat Agatam Va Prakritam. So the natural state of anything is Sanskrit, and from that Prakrit has come. Then Prakrit Sarvasva, which is another Prakrit, says, Prakriti Samskritam Tatra Bhavam Prakritam Uchyate. Prakriti is likewise it goes on. And now there is another scholar who is not a Jain scholar, and he is what to say? He is Vakpati Raj, who has written the great text Gaudavaho. He says, Sayalao imam vaya visanti ettoyanenti vayao enti samuddam chiyanenti sayarao chiya jalayid. It's a very beautiful quotation from Mahakavi Vakpati Raj in Gaudavaho Mahakavya. He very clearly says, just as all the, what to say, the water comes from the ocean and goes back to the ocean. When the ocean water dries up, condensation, evaporation, and again the rainwater, again all the water goes and merges with the samudra, and then again the cycle goes on. In the same way, all the languages come from Prakrit and go back to Prakrit. All the languages come from Prakrit, and in the languages, Prakrit is embedded. This is what Mahakavi Vakpati Raj says in his Gaudavaho. So now coming to analyze the term Prakrit, I would like to ask a question, but even though I would not like to have the answer from you, it is for you to reason that which oil comes first, the crude oil or the refined oil? You all know the answer. It is a crude oil that first comes, and then it is refined, and then it is used. In the same way, the crude form of any language is Prakrit, and the refined form of that language in the Indo-European language family is called as Sanskritam. Sanskrit means sanskar kiya hua. Kiska sanskar kiya hua? What was the raw stock? And that is Prakrit. So one school of thought is that from Sanskrit originate all the languages, including Prakrit. Whereas another school of thought is that it is Prakrit which is the mother of all North Indian languages, including Upper Brahmsha, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, and all these languages. They owe their origin to Prakrit. And those who would not like to agree with this, we tell them that Prakrit and Sanskrit are Sahodaras. Saha Udara. They are born from the same womb. They are sisters. Not to go into a Raga Dvesha situation. Whatever. So it's a subject of research. Again, I would like to say it's a subject of research, and these are the two schools of thought. Now, I would like to throw light on the importance of Prakrit language. So my topic, I would discuss the meaning, the significance, the development of Prakrit language, and the different shades of Prakrit language, and then the contribution of Prakrit language to Indian culture, and a few Subhashitas here and there. So this is the scheme of my presentation. I hope I'm loud and clear. I'm loud and clear? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for Prasanna Kumar, sir, for keeping your video on. I'm looking at you and talking. Thank you, sir. Sorry, I've admitted somebody. Thank you. So, first of all, we should understand what is the difference between a language and a dialect. Dialect is called as Boli and language is called as Bhasha. So Prakrit initially was a Boli. It was Bol Chal ki Bhasha. It was the common man's language, even in the pre-Vedic period. And I'm going to prove it right now. From the pre-Vedic times, Prakrit was the common man's language. So if you take the world language families, we can say that there are around 300 language families and more than 3,000 languages and no number of the dialects or the bolis. So if we were quickly to analyze the different Prakrit language families, we have around 12 language families, very broadly classified into Indo-European language family that is called as Bharopiya Bhasha Parivar. Then you have the Semitic, Hematic, Tibet, China, Ural, Altai, Dravidian, and Banter, and all these families. And coming to Indo-European language family, that is Bharat and Europe. So the languages spoken in Bharat, in North India, leaving the Dravidian languages of Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. And of course, some of the Northeastern Tibetan and Northeastern languages. We understand that the languages of Europe, some languages of Europe, name majorly Latin, Greek, English, okay, they all come from the same source, and that is that family is called as the Indo-European language family. And this Indo-European language family, the old languages are Sanskrit, Prakrit, Old Iranian, Greek, and Latin. And the modern languages of this family are English, German, French, Pashto, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, and New Iranian. And coming to the place of Prakrit, so Prakrit belongs to the old language of this family, Indo-European language family. Now, talking about the importance of Prakrit, I fixed the place of Prakrit in the medieval age of this Indo-European Bhasha Parivar. Now, coming to the significance of Prakrit, what is Prakrit? It is initially it was a dialect, it was a Bolchal ki Bhasha, and it was spoken in the length and breadth of India, India of today, and India of those days, which spread from Greece to Indonesia. It was a spoken language of those days. And in Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, you find reference to 19 shades of Prakrit, which is of the first century. 19 shades of Prakrit was established in the first century Common Era. Although it was a Bolchal ki Bhasha, but later on, when literature was written in it and a grammar was constructed around it, it took the form of a language. So first comes Boli, a dialect, and then comes the language. So in those days, when people spoke in Prakrit, they did not have the grammar before them. You and I today, when we talk in our mother tongue, we don't refer to our grammar. We simply talk. We don't refer to the grammar and talk. The grammar is constructed eventually later on after the literature is built up in that dialect, in that language, in that dialect, and then that dialect takes the form of a language. So first we should understand that Prakrit was the common man's language, even before the Vedic period, during the Vedic period, and at the time of Mahavir and Buddha. And that is why Mahavira and Buddha spoke in the common man's language, and the Prakrit spoken by Buddha is called as Pali, and the Prakrit of Mahavir was Ardhamagadi. Likewise, the Prakrit spoken in the eastern part of Magadha kingdom was called as Magadhi, and that which was spoken in the western part and around Magadha kingdom was Ardha Magadhi. And that which was spoken in the central part was called as Shauraseni, and in the Punjab and the you have the northwestern front, that was Paishachi, and in Maharashtra it was Maharashtri Prakrit. So, and from the local Prakrits came the local Apabhramsha, and from the local Apabhramsha came the local state languages like Marathi, Gujarati, Marwadi, and Punjabi, and Nepali, and not Nepali, all the different shades of Hindi. And Hindi, or the Khadi Boli Hindi, is a standardized form of the later Apabhramshas. When Prakrit was taking the form of a standard language, Apabhramsha developed. When Apabhramsh was taking a standard form, Hindi developed. And now when Hindi has taken a standard form, you have Hindi, English mix, English, you have Bengali, Hindi mixed, Bengalish, all different kinds of languages that are brewing up, and only time will tell us about the form that Prakrit will, or these languages will take in future. Because the nature of any language or the nature of Prakrit is parivartan. It is like the river water that keeps flowing and you put a dam. So in one place you put the dam, it became Sanskrit. In another place you put the dam, it became the different shades of Prakrit. Then you put another dam, it became Apabhramsh. Then you put another dam, it became Hindi. But there is so much water that flows down, and new languages keep coming up. So this is how the development of languages take place. So first point we understand is that Prakrit was a common man's language, a spoken language, and then it was a language of the masses, and that is why Mahavira and Buddha gave their sermons in the common man's language, because they wanted the common man to understand their philosophy and practice it and uplift themselves spiritually, culturally, morally, etc. Okay, so now it is the Jains and the Buddhists who have written ample literature in Prakrit, and here and there you have a few Vedic scholars also writing in Prakrit. I don't remember their names, although I've seen a few of them. Okay, and then the great, other than the religious literature, we have the great poets like Pravar Sen, Hala, all these Mahakavis who have written in Prakrit language. And then you have the Sanskrit dramas. I can say 30% of the Sanskrit dramas of Kalidasa, Bhasa, and other great Sanskrit scholars, it is Prakrit. 30% of the Sanskrit dramas have their dialogues in Prakrit. And thirdly, the language of Ashokan inscriptions, Hathi Gumfa inscriptions, and Nasik inscriptions, and the Kharavela inscriptions at you have in Orissa. All of these are in Prakrit language. The oldest Prakrit inscriptions are of 3rd century BC, and Sanskrit inscriptions are of 2nd century AD. This goes to prove that Prakrit is older than the Prakrit culture. The culture that is promoted in the Prakrit literature is older than the culture that is promoted in the Sanskrit literature. Okay, and then I've told you about this, and then you have the Ashokan inscriptions I told you, and all these bhashas, all these languages together, I told you they are Maharashtri, Magadhi, Ardha Magadhi, Paishachi. The common name they get is Prakrit. And now coming to now if we have to divide the development of Prakrit, looking at the classification, the development of Prakrit, we have 3 stages of Prakrit. The first stage called as the Prathamik Star, and then you have the second stage, the Dvitiya Star, and then the Tritiya Star, that is the modern Star. So very quickly, I will tell you about the development of Prakrit language. So the first stage of Prakrit, I told you I'll be demonstrating to you how Prakrit was a pre-Vedic language. We cannot solidly prove it. I can only help you to infer it. For example, when Panini wrote the Sanskrit grammar, what would have been his mother tongue? Even he would have spoken Prakrit at home. Example, when you and I attend a meeting or we are in the public, we talk in the language of the masses. If you have to interact with the rickshawala, you will talk in the regional language. If you have to interact with the staff, your colleague, you will talk in English or in chaste English or Hindi or Kannada or Tamil. And if you have to go for an international conference, you will talk in a different style altogether. You understand? So what I'm trying to say is that you and I don't use the grammar to interact at home. Like, for example, when a child is born, he will not say matru, pitru. He will say ma. He will say amma. So what is this? This is Prakrit. And the refined form of that became matru, pitru. So Sanskrit today is not a spoken language, but Prakrit, even before
Madam, we have lost your voice.
language of Vedas. And the language of Vedas is called as Chandas Sanskrit, the older Sanskrit, which is very close to Prakrit. More than 50% of the form of Prakrit grammar and language you can find in the Vedic, the literature. Like how these different Prakrits got the shade of different Apabhramsha, and then later on the different Apabhramshas became the different dialects of North India, and the standard form of these dialects became the Khadi Boli Hindi. So in this way, we can say that the different languages, not languages, the dialects that were spoken during the pre-Vedic period, the standard form of it, which is very close to Prakrit, is the Vedic Prakrit. And from there developed the classical Sanskrit. And from there developed the Prakrit literature and all that. So both Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit, and the Prakrit language of Mahavir and Buddha owe their origin to an earlier form of Prakrit, which was spoken even before the Vedic period. And what was the form of it, we will not be knowing about. That is called as the first stage of Prakrit. The date of it, you can say it as 2000 years before Christ. It went on up to, you can say, 500 BCE, before Common Era. So 1500 years, maybe that language was a spoken language. And then the second stage of Prakrit can be divided into 3 stages. The second stage can be divided into 3 yugas. The first yuga, called as Prathama Yuga, is from 400 BCE or plus or minus 100, 200, you can take 400 BCE or 600 BCE to 100 AD, Common Era, BCE to CE. And the second yuga is from 100 AD to 500 AD, CE, plus or minus 100, 200 years. And the third yuga is from the 500 AD to 1000 AD, and 1000 AD, that is CE, is a time when Hindi started developing. So Prakrit is the grandmother of Hindi, and the mother of Hindi is Apabhramsha. And the children of the Prakrit and Apabhramsha are all the modern North Indian languages and the old Apabhramshas. And in one place, I even got to see the names of 27 shades of Apabhramsha. And many scholars feel that Apabhramsha means the language that is brushed. but it is not the language that is brushed up. It is the language that did not got constrained in Sanskrit and Prakrit. It flowed down from there and it gave birth to all the modern North Indian languages. Now coming to the literature of the first Yuga, that is around 400 BCE to 100 AD, that is 500 years. You have the Pali language of the Hinayana Bauddha Tripitakas, the Mahavamsha, and the Jataka tales. The language of those texts is the language of that period. Then Paishachi and Chulika Paishachi, the language of the Jain Agamas, Ardhamagadi Prakrit, and then the language of Paumucharyam and the Jain Maharashtri works, and then the language of Ashoka's Shilalekh inscriptions, and the later Shilalekh of Hathigumpha, Nasik, and all that, and the language of Ashwaghosh Natak, the dramas of Ashwaghosha. So this is the period when all this literature was constructed, whether in written form or oral form. Of course, the Jain Agamas were constructed orally and written down in 500 Common Era, that is AD. Now coming to the Madhya Yuga, that is from 100 CE to 100 CE to 500 CE, you have the Prakrit of the dramas of Bhasa and Kalidasa, and which are in Shauraseni, Magadhi, and Maharashtri. Then you have the great texts of Setubandha, Gatha Saptashati in Maharashtri Prakrit, and then the different grammars, okay, of Maharashtri, Shauraseni, Magadhi, Paishachi, Chulika, Paishachi, wherein you find all the Lakshan and Udaharan of all these Prakrits. There you will see the old form of Prakrit language. Then you have the Digambar Jain literature of Shauraseni, and then the post-Agamic literature of the Shvetambars. They fall in this period. And then the grammar of Chanda and Vikrama Urvashi, the different, what to say, in Vikrama Urvashi, you have the grammar of Chanda and the different forms of Apabhramsha. They all belong to this period. And then from 500 to 1000 is the time period of Apabhramsha, the different types of Apabhramsha that developed. And the Jain Acharyas have contributed to both Prakrit, Apabhramsha, and likewise in Tamil, Marathi, Gujarati, Telugu. Telugu, I don't know much. Hindi, in all languages, the Jain Acharyas have been penning down their thoughts and contributing to the Indian literary scene. Okay, so I hope you get. And when Prakrit and Apabhramsha both became standardized, Hindi and all these modern North Indian languages developed. So I hope this part of the talk is clear with everybody. Any doubts so far?
There's a question wherein they say, where is Sanskrit in this then?
I told you that when, see, the pre-Vedic period were all the dialects, and the standard form of those dialects you find in the Vedas, that is the Chandas Sanskrit. And from there developed the classical Sanskrit. That is one tributary. And the other tributary is all the Jain literature and the Buddhist literature and all the Maharashtri literature. Clear? So any questions at this time, if you have, then I would like to go to the next segment of my talk. Is it clear? Am I loud and clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, is Prakrit a dead language? Then I would say that you have to add Prakrit with everything. The first stage Prakrit, then Arsh or Ardhamagadi Prakrit, Pali Prakrit, Shauraseni Prakrit, Paishachi Prakrit, likewise Maharashtri Prakrit, Apabhramsha Prakrit, Hindi Prakrit, Bangla Prakrit, Gujarati Prakrit, Marwadi Prakrit, Marathi Prakrit. So that way, Prakrit is not a dead language, although It is not spoken the way it was spoken a few thousand years ago. I'll give you one example. When you say Namo Arahantanam, even though you do not know Prakrit, don't you know don't you get the meaning of it, that it is Namaskar to Arhats? When you say Ichhami, it is very clear that I desire. Ichhami, Vandami, Namansami, Sakkaremi, Sammanemi. That means I'm doing Vandan, I'm doing Namaskar, I'm doing Samman, I'm doing Satkar, Sammanemi, Satkaremi. So these words, they say, oh, madam, Prakrit is like Hindi. Namo means Namaskar, Arhantanam, two Arhats. So now you tell me, a daughter is like the mother or the mother is like the daughter? Definitely the daughter is like the mother. But you're so familiar with the daughter in the school that when the mother comes to school, you say, hey, friend, your mother looks just like you. But it is actually the other way, no? The daughter looks like the mother. But you're so familiar with the daughter, so you say that Prakrit is like Hindi, but it's actually the other way. So Hindi and all these languages owe their origin to Prakrit, and that every day we demonstrate in our class. Not demonstrate, we get to see when we are learning and teaching Prakrit. The same words are used in Hindi as they are. In Marathi also you can trace. Likewise in Kannada, Tamil also, you can trace the words to Prakrit. Although it will be debated whether this Indo-European language family borrowed from the Dravidian languages or the Dravidian language family borrowed from the Indo-European language. But we have to understand that any language cannot function in isolation. There will always be a give and take between different language families at all levels. Supposing you and I go to China or Japan, you will be learning Japanese at the same time, your mother tongue and Chinese language. Again, if a settlement is there, another one language will come up. So that is the nature of language. Okay, friends. Now, second point is, why is Prakrit language study important? It is my very strong contention that without a visit to the Jain, Buddhist, and Prakrit literature. When I say Prakrit literature, it is not merely the Jain and Bauddha literature. It is the literature of Vajjalagam. It is the literature of Gaha Saptashati and Gaudavaho and all these texts. Without visiting these texts, if you write the history of India or Bharata Desha, it will be incomplete. It will not be the correct picture, because you will only be giving either the Vedic side of the story or the Mughal side of the story or the British side of the story, and ignoring the very ancient heritage and culture of India. And if I can say, I don't claim to be a great scholar of Indus script, but the Indus Valley civilization was a great Shramanic civilization because not a single weapon was found over there. And the script of the Indus Valley and the philosophy that is there in the Indus seals comes closer to the philosophy that is coded in the Prakrit language, that is revealed in the form of the philosophy of self-realization, ahimsa, self-restraint, and other things. So without understanding the Shramanic culture that is coded in the Jain and Buddhist texts and Prakrit language, we cannot interpret the Indus Valley civilization correctly. This is my humble contention, and this is again a subject of research. Okay, even though I do not claim to be a great scholar in this arena, because again, this is a subject of research. Okay, so many Western scholars have done a great study of Prakrit. You have Woolner, Fischel, and so many people. And until 1950, it was believed that Jainism is an offshoot of Buddhism or Hinduism. And people did not know there was an independent language called Prakrit. And Prakrit owes its recognition to these German and Western scholars who read the Prakrit literature, who wrote the Prakrit grammar in English, and took up these research studies. And you have uh, scholars like Grierson and even Max Muller and Pischel and Woolner. They have established Prakrit and they have got Prakrit great recognition in the Western world. But among the Jain community or among the scholarly community, Prakrit has been not so much visited to like Sanskrit and how people are familiar with Sanskrit. The government of India may sponsor a lot of programs related to propagating Sanskrit. But what about Prakrit? So we Jains, I would like to take the onus on us that we Jains have not studied Prakrit and not promoted Prakrit studies. And that is why the Jain culture, the Jain community is again shrinking. It was shrinking and it is still shrinking now. So if we are to safeguard even our Jain community, we need to safeguard our Prakrit language. This is one of the, the points that I wanted to highlight later on. So is it clear? Now, what are these resemblances between the Vedas, the Vedic Sanskrit, Chandas Sanskrit and Prakrit? I would not go into that deeper unless and until you're familiar with Prakrit grammar. This point will not help you in any way. So now we understand that Prakrit was the mother tongue of those days, and it was a state and court language. And that is why Ashoka gave his inscriptions in Prakrit, because it was the state language of that time. Okay. And again, Kharavel wrote his inscriptions, the Hathi Gumfa inscriptions in Prakrit. So that means that was the state language of those days. And it was wiped out by a series of invasions done by the Lodhis, the Tughlaqs, the Mughals, the Sultanates, and so many invaders who tried to erase the Indian heritage, Indian culture, and along with that, the Jain heritage, Jain culture, Jain language faced a severe setback. Then, third point, Prakrit was a medium of communication. That is why Tirthankar and Buddha and Ashoka, they used it to propagate their messages and sermons, etc. And then it was a poetic language. See, in those days, when the kings were there and the courtiers were there, there used to be three different groups. One group of poets reciting their verses in Prakrit, another group of poets reciting their verses in Sanskrit, another in Apabhramsha. And the kings themselves, they wrote some pieces of literature and presented it before the august audience. And the one beautiful example of this is Vajjalagam and Gaha Saptasati. They are the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star poems of Prakrit language. Baba Black Sheep, Jack and Jill, Twinkle. So beautiful verses in Vajjalagam. And I would like to recite a few of them for you. It is believed that there were more than 1 lakh gathas in Vajjalagam, of which today we have only around, say, 700 or so. Most of them lost, and they were compiled by a Jain Acharya. So that is how it was a poetic language and it was a court language, and that is why the rulers at that time, they nurtured it and they patronized the languages and the literature and the poets, and that is how we have an exhaustive literature across India in different languages, and all these languages owe their origin to different shades of Prakrit and Apabhramsha. So this is again a subject of research. And then you have the Sanskrit dramas I told you. Now, I would like to tell about the branches of Prakrit language. If you have to study Prakrit, how you have to go about it. First of all, I will request all of you, take my number and enroll with me for the certificate program, and then do the diploma program. And then you can take up the manuscripts that are there in different shades of Prakrit and translate them, and then find out the Jain, not Jain, the Indian heritage and culture, which is hidden in those manuscripts still. And you all know Nalanda University was burnt, and most of our manuscripts are in the Bhandargaras of Patan and so many other places, which are waiting for researchers like you who will visit them and translate them. When I visited Koba, where there are 4 lakhs books in the library, out of those 4 lakh books, 1 lakh are manuscripts of different Prakrits and different Apabhramsha and different languages of India. And they are waiting for researchers like you and me who will take them up and do the translation, cataloging, digitalization. A lot of work is happening, and there is so much of more scope that can be done. And we would like to request the government of India and the different agencies through Jain Heritage Centers to look into this aspect of promoting the ancient Indian heritage and culture. Now, if you have to study Prakrit, first of all, you have to understand the origin and development and the different shades of Prakrit. Second, you have to understand the Prakrit of the different agamas. The Jain Agama Sahitya, the Ardhamagadi, which includes the Angas, the Upangas, the Mula Sutras, the Cheda Sutras, and the Prakirnakas. The third one is the Prakrit of the Digambar literature. And that is, you have all the, what to say, you have all the literature of Kunda, and then you have the literature of Shatkhandagam, Kashai Pahud, Tilloya Pannati, and all the logic works, which is Nayasar, Nay Chakra, Aradhana Sar, Tattva Sar, and all the Shravakachar works, Vasunandi Shravakachar, and all these works, you know, which is the literature of the Digambar Sampradaya. And then you have the post-agamic literature. Before the post-agamic literature comes the Prakrit of the different kinds of commentaries. The Niryukti, the Bhashya, the Churni, and the Tika Sahitya. You have so much of commentary literature written on the Agamas, which are, the Niryuktis are in Prakrit, the Churnis are in Prakrit and Sanskrit mix, the Bhashya are again in, what to say, different, the Tikas are in Sanskrit, and the Bhashyas are again in Prakrit, and a little bit of the Champu style, Sanskrit Prakrit mix, you have them. So this way you see the development or the contribution of Prakrit, Jains to the Prakrit language. Then you have the post-agamic literature, the language of the Karma Granthas, the language of the Digambar Panchasangraha, and the Shravakachar works. You have at least 40 Shravakachar works in Sanskrit and Prakrit. Then you have the Prakaran Granthas. Then you have the Prakrit story literature. You know, the first story literature was written in Prakrit. The Brihat Katha Kosha, Gunadhya's Brihat Katha Kosha. Brihat means huge, Katha Kosha. And the Sanskrit Katha of Panchatantra was written by a Jain Acharya called Purnabhadra Suri. And it became so popular that people forgot the name of the author. That is the contribution of the Jain Acharyas. Okay, so you have the Prakrit story literature, like how you have the Harry Potter novels today. I'm so sorry, with Nitin, I admitted somebody. I'm used to the classes admitting people. Then you have the Prakrit of the different story, how you have the Harry Potter novels now today. So the first novel was written in Prakrit language, which is called as Taranga Vai Kaha. Then you have the Samaraditya Katha, which is a Samaraicha Kaha, Vasudeva Hindi. All these are the novels written in Prakrit language. And then you have the story literature, Mahubindu, Drashtant, Kassesa Bhajja, and so many beautiful stories, you know, in Prakrit language. So you can make animation films on the Prakrit story literature and popularize the Prakrit language and culture. So this is one assignment that somebody can take it up. Then you have the Prakrit Charita Sahitya, the narrative literature. Charit means the biographies of Rama, of the Harivamsha Charitra, Paumacharya, Jambuswami Charitra, Surasundri Charitra, Rayana Chuda Raya Charya, Pasanaha Charya, Mahavira Charya, Supasanaha Charya, and Kummaputta Charya. All these narrative literature has beautiful, depiction of the Indian culture of those days. The next you have the Prakrit poetry literature, of which about I told in Vajjalagam, Gaha Satsai, and Ravana Vijay, Leela Vai Kaha, and Kansa Vadha, and all this literature. Then the dramas of Sanskrit, and you have Ashwaghosh, Bhasa, the drama of Mrichakatika, on which that famous movie Utsav was made. Then the dramas of Kalidasa, Harsha, Bhavabhuti, Mudra Rakshas, etc. And then you know, one act plays are called Sataka. They were also written in Prakrit. Karpura Manjari, Vilasavati, Chandaleha, Ananda Sundari, Singara Manjari, Ramba Manjari, etc. Besides this, you can trace the Prakrit language of the grammar works like Prakrit Prakash, Prakrit Shabdanushasan, Siddha Hema Shabdanushasan, etc., etc. Then you have the Chanda Granthas, the Alankara Granthas, written in Prakrit language. Their names are also given. And for this, I'll request you all to please get a copy of Prakrit Sahitya Ka Itihas by Dr. Jagdish Chandra Jain. Beautiful text which talks about all these types of Prakrits. And then you have the, the Prakrit of the miscellaneous form. You have Artha Shastra written in Prakrit, politics written in Prakrit language, Nimitta Shastra. Then you have the Angavidya, Joni Pahuda, Jyotisha Karandaka. Then you have Lagga Suddhi, Dina Suddhi, Karalakhana, Agga Khanda, Ratna Pariksha, that is gemology, Dhatu Pariksha, that is metallurgy. All these subjects, sciences, you can say, you can find in Prakrit language written. And then, of course, the Shilalekhī Prakrit. So this is the rich Jain, the Prakrit literature that is spread across, but how many people are there to read? Only a few mad people like Nitin and me. We care for our ancient heritage and we believe in promoting it in whatever capacity we can. And now I would like to give you a taste of Prakrit. And I'll want your permission to recite a few verses that we teach in our department and in the Prakrit certificate and diploma programs. So, and I'll request you all to kindly pay attention and just enjoy them, nothing else. For example, the first one I would say is Purisa Satchameva Samabhijanahi. O Purusha, that means O Atman, understand the truth profoundly. Satchameva, Satyameva, Samabhijanahi. Janahi means know. Samabhijanahi means know profoundly. Then he says, the Prakrit verses, they go like this. I would like to quote over here. Suyano na kuppai chiya Ahapuppai mangulam na chintei. Ahachintei na jampai. Ahajampai lajjiro hoi. That means what? So I'll tell you word by word. Suyano means Sujan. Okay, Suyano means Sujan. This is from Vajjalagam. It's a beautiful text. Now, if each text of Prakrit, if I have to say no, then we need another one lecture on it. Every text of Prakrit language, I can talk about it for hours together. This Vajjalagam, it is written in different sections. Sajjana Vajja, Durjana Vajja, Hansa Vajja, and Asurya Vajja, Dina Vajja. So Vajja means sections. It's a paddhati. So this Sajjana Vajja talks about who is a Sajjan, who is a gentleman. So it says, Suyano na kuppai. A Sajjan is one who never gets angry. Aha kuppai na jampai. Mangulam na chinte. Even if he gets angry, he will not think ill of others. Aha chinte na jampai. Even if he thinks ill of others, he will not utter a word. And aha jampai lajjiro hoi. If he tells a word, if he utters a word of abuse, he will be very, very, very ashamed of it or embarrassed of it. Now you take a Durjan, opposite of this. A Durjan will always get angry. He will think ill of others. He will utter all abusive language, and he will not even be ashamed of it. Now you look at the Indian culture through this lens. Who is a gentleman and who is a brute? Who is an Arya and who is an Anarya? See, Arya, Anarya are not two races. The Westerners tried to divide India in the name of Aryan Dravidian, in the name of North and South, in the name of Sanskrit Prakrit, in the name of Jaina Bauddha Hindu, in the name of different languages of the states. So this was not the scene before in India. All coexisted, all nurtured each other, and all existed in harmony and contributed to the great ocean of Indian culture. So you understand. Now, another one Vajja I would like to say. Dohim chiya pajjattam, bahuehim vi kim gunehim suyanasa, vijjufuriyam roso, mitti pahan rehav. He says, two qualities are enough in a sajjan. Two qualities are enough in a sajjan. What are those qualities? What to do with so many qualities? And what are those qualities? His anger, roso means his anger, is like vijju furium, like a vidyut, like the thunder and lightning. Here it comes, here it goes. And mitti means his friendship is like the pashan rehav. That means the rekha, the line drawn on the rock. When there is a cut in the rock, the line in the rock, it is permanent. But now you take the opposite of this. Durjan, his rosha is like the line drawn on the rock, and his friendship is like the vijjufurium, like the thunder and lightning. So this is one sample of the non-Jain literature in Prakrit language. Okay, then he says, Suyano Suddha Sahab. This is a very beautiful verse. Suyano Suddha Sahavo Mailijjanto vi Dujjana Janena Charena Dappano Via Ahiya Yaram Nimmalo Hoi. That means Sajjan, his swabha, Sajjan you all understand, I suppose. Sajjan, Satjan. A person who is wedded or committed to truth or reality is called Sajjan. So his swabhava is always Shuddha, like the mirror. Mai lijjanto vi dujjana janena, even though it is maligned by the Durjana Jana, the Sajjana Swabhava will become more bright and bright. And he gives an example over here. Charena dappano viya ahiya yaram nimmalo hoi. If you take soda and some, some ash and put it on the mirror, what happens? The mirror, the shine of the mirror is more. In the same way, if the Durjan tries to malign the Sajjan, the glow of the Sajjan will only manifest. You understand what I'm trying to say? Ahiya yaram nimmaloi. Adhikataram nirmala hoi. So such beautiful verses are there in Prakrit. And coming to the Jain samples of Prakrit language. Here you see, Jahaya andappa bhava balaga, andam balagappa bhavam jahaya, emeva mohaya yanam kutanha, moham cha tanhaya yanam payanti. That means, just as a crane is born out of an egg, and an egg is born out of a crane, likewise, anda means anda. From the anda comes the balaga, that is the crane, and from the balaga comes the anda, the egg. In the same way, moha comes from Trishna. Moha is born out of desire, and desire is born out of moha, that is delusion. Okay, then one more I would like to quote with your permission. This we should teach in all the Jain schools. I don't know about the other schools, but all schools, I would say, should know the values that are there in this such Subhashitas and Prakrit language. It says, Aha panchehim thanehim jehim sikha na labhai thamba koha pamaenam rogenaya alasenaya. That means there are 5 places or 5 kinds of people who will not be worthy of shiksha. They cannot get the real education. Who are those 5 kinds of people? The first one, thamba. Thamba means who have a very big ego, a false ego. Koha. Koha means who are anger, who are not respecting the culture of the land or truth, are having immense anger for their own atma and for everything that is true and good in the nature. That is krodha. Pamaenam, careless, pramada, rogena, diseased, and alasena, lazy people. If you have these 5 on your side, you are not fit or you are not worthy to get the higher education or get the basic education also. Because what is education? Education is promoting the inherent natural talent of every individual. And that is enlightenment, that is liberation. That is the natural talent that education should promote, and not make us slaves of materialism and technology and misuse them, overuse them, and abuse them, and spread the violence and hatred. So with every verse, you can refer it to the great Indian culture that we all are breathing and we all should be proud of. Okay, then there's one more beautiful verse. I would like to take Nitin's permission to just say 1 or 2 more and then come to the contribution part and close my lecture. Suthu vimaggi janto katha vikili nathi jahasaro India visaye sutaha nathi suham suthu vigavitham. Suthu means sushtu vi. Maggi janto, having searched very closely, very properly, not very properly, very well. Kathavi, nowhere. Keli, in the banana tree, plantain tree, you do not find the seed. That is why you see in Tamil Nadu, the marriages, they'll put the they'll put the banana trees, because the banana tree will put its own kuti. So you are getting married, you have lot of kutis and be happy. You understand? So in the banana tree, you won't find the sara, the keli in the banana, like how you in apple, you have the seed like that. Indriya Visaya, so in the Indriya Vishaya, Natti Suham. No, Natti, now this word Natti is there in Gujarati. Amma Piya is there in Prakrit. In so many words, I can just tell you on and on and on. Natti, Suham Natti, Sukh Natti, Sukh nahi hai. Suttu vi gavitam, having searched properly. Okay, then one more very beautiful verse. Jagaraha Nara, O Nara, Jagaraha, Jago. And Swami Vivekananda said, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Buddha said, be a light unto yourself. And the same thing you find in the Prakrit literature, which says, Jagaraha Nara, O human being, be awake. Why? Nicham Jagara Manasa Vaddate Buddhi. One who is alert and awake and careful, his buddhi will increase. Vaddate Buddhi. Jo Suvati Na So Dhanno. One who is sleeping in deep slumber of ignorance and delusion, he is not worthy. He is not dhanya. He is not praiseworthy. Jo Jagati So Saya Dhanno. One who is always alert, awake, enlightened, is worthy and is blessed. So many beautiful things are there. I have one line verses, I have two line verses, and whole novels and stories and poems and the agamas. There is no end to. And my favorite is Kunda Kunda's literature. And I take great pride in reading Kunda Kunda in Prakrit and teaching in Prakrit. Just the other day in the diploma program, I was taking the Pravachan-sar Gathas in Prakrit. And my students were so happy, like me, to read the Jain philosophy through Prakrit works. So reading Prakrit like this is different, and integrating Prakrit and the Jain philosophy is different, and integrating Prakrit and Jain philosophy and Indian culture. It's a different level altogether. So I'm happy that I take pride in having studied Indian culture at the BA level, then the Jain culture at the Jain level, and the Prakrit culture at the Prakrit level. And I'm so proud of this present. I'm not proud. I'm very happy and humbled to make this presentation. And I would like to close with a few points here and there, closing words about the contribution. The first contribution of Prakrit language is to the literary heritage of India, where you have the prose, the poetry, the dramatics, the inscriptions, and the miscellaneous literature of Prakrit, of Apabhramsha, and all the modern North Indian languages which owe their origin to Prakrit. Second, we have the cultural heritage, which was there in this literature, and it has found form in art, architecture, and the different customs that are prevalent across the length and breadth of India. They owe their origin to these languages, the Aryan and the Dravidian language families. And then you have the religious heritage, the different religious literature of the Shwetambar Agamas, the Digambar texts, and then the Buddhist Pitakas, and then the other literature of Maharashtri, Prakrit, and the other than the religious literature, you have the literature of the different prose and poetry. So these three heritages, if they are alive today, The roots of it are there in the Prakrit language, and that is very, very deep rooted in the Indian masses. So no invasion or no Gajwaye Hind. You know this word Gajwaye Hind that is propagated by the Muslims. So why is it Gajwaye Hind? That means capture Hind. Why not Gajwaye China, Gajwaye Spain, Gajwaye America? Because Indian culture is the fulcrum of the great eternal culture. So if you win over that culture, then you have established victory all over the world. But friends, we don't have to worry about all these anti-social elements and continue our work in promoting the great Indian culture in whatever form we can, and take pride in it. First of all, we need to take pride in it. We need to take all these things to our schools and colleges, which was broken down, the Indian education system, which was broken down by Macaulay's, the Westerners, the Britishers' policies. We need to revive all this and visit this literature and take it back to the masses. Okay, friends. And then with these words, I would like to say that no spoken language has originated from Sanskrit language or any other regional language. No spoken language has originated from Sanskrit language. Okay. The Sanskrit is the refined form of Prakrit, as I told you earlier. So that has not given birth to any spoken language. But Prakrit has given birth to so many languages, and definitely not many people are aware of what I'm telling, and we need to take things forward. And yeah, and other regional languages that were vogue during the Vedic and the pre-Vedic period, and that is the first stage of Prakrit. From there came the second stage of Prakrit, the different literature that we have today. And then the third stage of Prakrit, that is the Apabhramsha. And then from there came the modern North Indian dialects and the modern North Indian languages. So this is about and quick summary of what I've told you so far. First, I gave you the meaning of Prakrit, then the two schools of thought, telling Sanskrit is older, and then the other one telling Prakrit is older, and then the significance of Prakrit and the different kinds of Prakrit literature, the development of Prakrit, and then a few Subhashitas, and then broadly the contribution of the Prakrit language and literature in the form of promoting the cultural heritage, the socio-spiritual cultural values, or rather I can say humanity, spirituality, divinity, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, and all these got a place in our Indian constitution, and that is the secular fabric of India. And with this, I would like to end my talk, giving a thanks to all you listeners, and especially to my good friend Nitin. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Priyadarshana, madam. I think it was a very enlightening lecture, starting from the history of Prakrit, its development, its different shades, and how it's the mother of different languages of the world. Rather, it's the granddaughter of Hindi, the different stories and novels. And also, you have also shown how some of these novels are much, much higher than the Harry Potters of the world, and how we Indians and Jains should be proud of it. And adding to that, I think you've also spoken about the books related to the different subjects that are available, could be philosophy, metallurgy, and many other aspects. Moreover, how Prakrit Ghatas are also speaking about the moral values and about various aspects about Jainism through the Subhashitas. In addition to that, I think you have also given how it can be integrated with Jainism, and also how it is the mother of many languages, including the Indian culture. I think it was a very eye-opening lecture for all of us, including myself. Like, just to rightly say, a couple of the comments from few of our listeners have been on the same lines, where they have clearly expressed that it was really an eye-opening lecture on many aspects and many misconceptions that many of us have. I think, like what Madam said, even through this lecture, even if we are able to change the enlighten the at least 3 to 4 people out of the people who have listened to it, and even if one person makes up their mind to learn Prakrit, and then I think our efforts are worth it. That is what I feel. With this, I would like to thank Dr. Priyadarshana Madam. Thank you all for listening to us over the past hour and 15 minutes. I never felt like it has been over an hour and 15 minutes. I was still feeling like, oh, okay, we have crossed much. I think it was very engaging lecture by Dr. Priyadarshana Madam. With this, we would like to conclude this session. Thank you.